This is Rodney VanAlstine, Shepherd's Path Farm, living well on half an acre. We're canning beets, and we're at another video in our series of canning beets. And this is my beautiful wife, and I'll hand it over to her.
These are the smaller beets that we had scrubbed and washed and boiled up and took the skins off. And some of them are still a little bit large, so I'm just going to cut them into quarters so they can fit in the jars. Others are very small, so you could pretty much leave those whole. I'm just going on ahead and cutting them in half, and the larger ones in quarters. And when I'm done doing that, I'll turn, here's another one that's quite big, so I'm just going to cut it in quarters. You don't want to make them too small because they still have to go in the canner, and you don't want them to mush away to nothing while they're cooking. So these, I just quarter them. Cut this one in half.
You want them about the size of half of a golf ball or so to go in the canner, because you're pressure cooking them at about 30 or 40 minutes at 10 pounds of pressure. And if you don't have them at the right size, they're going to turn to mush. You want them to have a little bit of size to them.
And here are the ones that you could relatively just put in a pint-sized jar. They're very small. So I'm just going to cut that in half and then in half again. Some people look at these. You can heat them up. You could make a nice sauce for them. You can glaze them in the oven. You can put them in salad. They're good to have they have a long shelf life over the year. We still have some left over from last year. It's nice to put up enough that by the time you get another crop in the following spring, you know, you still have some from the year before to use up before you even touch the ones that you are canning up for the upcoming winter. Just makes it a lot more easier to keep up with, and you can rotate your jars out. I think we put up about 50 last year.
About 50 or 60.
And we still have quite a bit left over, but that means you don't have to can as many.
Our family is a family of 3, so it has my wife, myself, my daughter, and I like to eat. I don't know about y'all out there, but myself, I like to eat, and we've still got a few jars left, so that'll give you an idea how many you might have to can, you know, in your family.
You want to be able to can the things that you like to eat. If you're not a fan of beets, maybe there's something that you or your family members like particularly well, and that you're going to use up throughout the course of the winter, that you try your best to can the most of. And it keeps you from having to fight with the grocery stores or bulk food stores. The more you're able to do for yourself, the better off your family will be, the more self-sufficient you will be. Okay, we've got our beets cut up. I'm going to trade places. This is a bowl with the larger beets in it, and you pretty much do the same. You cut them up a little bit smaller to about this size, and I'm going to show you how to get this done now. We've got the canner already boiled in our jars. I'm going to take the lid off of it. My husband can show you that. I also have a little 2-burner stove going, and my lid's already boiled up. Now that I've got everything opened. The recipe calls for a half a teaspoon of salt. It all depends on how much salt you prefer. Usually I try not to use a lot of salt in things. I think food has its own natural salt, so I try not to add too much salt to things. But the recipe does call for a half of a teaspoon of salt.
You can also use fruit fresh, and that'll help preserve your color as well as the flavor. It's just like a citric acid
But generally for beets, I don't too particularly like using it. They hold their color pretty well. So you'll go on ahead and you'll fill your pint jar with your beets. I try not to get it too close to the top. I think that's relatively good.
About 1 inch headspace.
1 inch
From the top of the
top.
From the top of the beets to the top of the jar.
And I have clean water here, so I'm just going to go on ahead and put the water in.
That's clean boiled water. Everything has been sterilized. We washed our hands, and you want everything in a sterile environment.
Usually I'm going to put a little bit more water in the top, just to cover the beet, not very much more. And you add your salt in the canning jar. What I like to do is I like to sit the jar on the counter and I run a knife around the ends to take all the air bubbles out. And you'll notice that even though I've ran the knife around the edges, there's a little bit of the beet still sticking out. So I'll just go back and add a little bit more water to it. You can judge it, but you don't want it so full that it'll come out of the jar when it's boiling. And it's important to get the bubbles out because that's part of...
Make sure there's nothing on the rim when you put your lid on.
It's important to get the air bubbles out because if you don't, you'll find that the majority of the water will come out of your jar. This one's kind of giving a little bit of a... I'm going to set this down a little bit. You just want it hand tight. You don't want to tighten it too much. And then you just get your lifter and you set it into the pressure canner. And you just repeat the process until you have your canner full. This canner holds 9 pints. And so we have a little ways to go. Put your beets into the jar. You don't have to reheat your beets or heat your beets. You just cut them up just as they are.
You pretty much already blanched them when you boiled them to take the skins off. But we really enjoy. We really enjoy canning our own food out of our own garden. That way we know exactly what our food is, what we're eating. We love to gardening, and we love our own canning and love eating our own food that the Lord has blessed us with.
He loves to eat.
Yeah, I like to eat.
He loves to eat. But I think the best part of this is the fact that your family, you know what's going in to your food. It's salt, water, and your vegetable. And like I said, it calls for 1/2 teaspoon of salt. You can use 1/4 depending on your taste. You know, to cut down on sodium. Sodium isn't very good for you. But if you can cut down on it, it won't change the result of your canning. It'll be just less salty, which is a good thing anyway. And again, I'm going to go back and just add a little bit more water to the top. Just a hair more. Just make sure that there's no pieces of beet or any kind of debris on the top of the rim.
Some people like to take a damp cloth and wipe the rim, but sometimes if your cloth isn't quite clean or something, it could introduce bacteria where you don't need it.
Right.
So it's just...
And then you lift it and set it in.
It's mainly preference.
Alright, we will get back to you as soon as we have a whole canner full, and we'll show you how to set the pressure cooker and the timer, and we'll be right back.
Have a blessed day. This is Rodney VanAlstine with Shepherd's Path Farm, living well on 1/2 acre, canning our beets. Bye-bye.